Hello Bio 2. We're going to continue on with Chapter 29 today. We'll actually finish Chapter 29 up today with a form and function in invertebrates. So again, how they carry out their normal body functions. And so what we're going to start with today is response, showing that invertebrates show three trends in the evolution of the nervous system. So obviously there's no nervous system, though you have to think about that with the sponges. Then after that we have what is known as centralization. Then we have what is called cephalization and specialization. So we're going to take a look at what all those three words mean in terms of having a nervous system. So cephalization, I'm going to start off as a reminder, is the concentration of nerve tissue and organs in one end of the body. So that just means that, again, we have, and an example would be in our insects, all their nerve cells are concentrated at the front end of their body to form a brain. And so our example of one of our first invertebrates that actually shows some type of nervous system, but it doesn't really fall into any of our centralization, specialization, or cephalization, are cnidarians, and they have nerve nets that consist of individual nerve cells that form a net-like arrangement throughout the animal's body. So these aren't really centralized, they're not cephalized, and they're not specialized in any way. So this is just kind of our earliest formation of a nervous system that kind of from here on out, all of our rest of our invertebrates can kind of build on this and make it more specialized. So in flatworms and roundworms, the nerve cells are more centralized, again, so they kind of have been more defined into one area. They kind of have a centralized location, but there are a few clumps of nerve tissue or ganglia in the head. So they haven't all been kind of combined into one area. They are somewhat, again, centralized, so they're in the general vicinity, but they aren't considered to be cephalized yet. And in our cephalopod and mollusks and arthropods, the ganglia have now been organized into a brain. So that's now where we have cephalization, which will lead to the ability to have specialization, which is present in our more complex animals' nervous system, and therefore they have more developed sense organs. And then complex animals have a variety of specialized sense organs that will help them detect light, them detect sound, chemicals, movement, and even electricity. So the specialization, which again comes along from having a brain, can lead to a lot of benefits to help detect a variety of things. So our next kind of characteristic is movement and support. So most animals will use muscles to move, they use muscles to breathe, and they also use them to pump blood, perform other life functions. So muscles play a big role, not just to help you lift weights and after school. They actually help you to do a lot of other different important functions. And in most animals, these muscles will work together with some sort of skeletal system that provides firm support. So they also kind of help keep us upright. So we're not just basically a big pile of mush. And again, we can apply that to the same thing as insects and arthropods and things like that. So there's going to be three types of skeletal systems that we've talked about up to this point that are found into arthropods. First one being what's known as a hydrostatic skeleton, an exoskeleton, and then an endoskeleton as well. So our first skeleton, again, it's been a while since we've mentioned this, but we have gone over this, is called the hydrostatic skeleton. And this forms when muscles surround a fluid-filled body cavity that will support the muscles. And so when the muscles contract, they push against fluid in the body cavity, which will cause the body to change shape. So it's literally like kind of a mixture of water, or some, if you want to call it water, or some type of fluid and muscles. When it contracts, it pushes the fluid into the body cavity, and the body changes shape. And it's found in annelids, and some of our cnidarians have this hydrostatic skeleton. So again, here is the hydrostatic skeleton with our muscles going along the outside. So those muscles contract, it pushes on the fluid or water on the inside, and that causes whatever cnidarian or annelid to change shape. So our next is one of our most recent vocabulary word is an exoskeleton or an external skeleton, and it's a hard body covering that's made of what we call chitin. Again, this should be our review. And our arthropods are what are going to have this type of skeleton, and they will move by using muscles that are attached to the inside of the exoskeleton. So remember, the muscles contract, they pull on the exoskeleton, forcing the arthropod to move. Here's an example. Remember all the joints, the different muscles that are going to be responsible for flexing and extending the joints, which again, we've gone over all this, and the muscles again pull on the exoskeleton, and that's what makes movement. And then endoskeletons. An endoskeleton is just a structural support that's located inside of the body. And remember, our sea stars and our other echinoderms had an endoskeleton. And then some of our vertebrates, which we'll talk about next, well actually all of our vertebrates, sorry, which we talk about in our next chapter, have endoskeletons as well. And again, here is just kind of a, you can't obviously see our endoskeleton from the outside, so that's again drawn version of what the endoskeleton looks like. And for one of our last topics here is for reproduction. So most invertebrates will reproduce sexually during at least part of their life cycle, depending on environmental conditions. However, many invertebrates are also capable of asexual reproduction. So both of these can be found within our groups of invertebrates. And sexual reproduction is beneficial because it maintains genetic diversity in a population. However, so that's just saying so we don't have a bunch of inbred invertebrates running around since they're able to reproduce sexually. And then asexual reproduction will allow our animals to reproduce rapidly and take advantage of favorable conditions in the environment. So if there's an abundance of nutrients and there's an invertebrate that can reproduce asexually, it's going to do that so it can, its species, so it can pass on its genes and its species can kind of thrive. And then sexual reproduction, again, just as a review, is the production of offspring from the fusion of gametes. Again, so this is our review. And male and female gametes, they join to create a zygote. Then the zygote goes through mitosis and develops into our multicellular animals. And in most animals, each individual is a single sex, so they're either male or female, and so therefore they either produce sperm or eggs. However, there are some animals which we know as hermaphrodites, which we've talked about before as well, which are individuals that produce both sperm and eggs. And when we have sexual reproduction, it can occur in one of two ways. There can be external fertilization, where again the eggs are fertilized outside of the female's body, whereas internal fertilization is the eggs are fertilized inside of the female's body. And then kind of wrapping it up here with our asexual reproduction, so that the offspring of asexual reproduction, they grow into multicellular organisms through the process of mitosis of diploid cells, and then some animals will reproduce asexually through budding or by dividing in two, which, remember, the process flatworms went through is called fission. So that's it for chapter 29, short chapter, but let me know if you have any questions.